recording going over here and the audio. All right. So today's guest is R.L. Bryer, and he is also known as the Pittsburgh HODLr, and he is also the author of the Blockchain Project Renaissance. Over the summer, he sent me a friend request. Not sure how he found out about me. It may have been through like the Bitcoin.com article, but we'll probably get into that, as this is our first time actually talking really in person, not over Facebook. But what RL's been doing a really great job of it on Facebook. He has these daily, what he calls a no edits crypto. I'm not sure if it's a podcast or just it's a daily vlog where it's 2 to 5 minutes, pretty much the cliff notes on everything you need to know about what's going on in the crypto space. And so when I've been pressed on time, it's been a great resource for me to go check out, see what's going on. All things crypto. I think he goes by John Liberty on Facebook. So I'm not sure what the best places for people to find him at, but I'd like to welcome RL to the podcast. So we've got John Liberty meeting the Liberty Advisor, and thank you for coming on today.
Tim, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be your guest today.
And where's the best place that people can find you? Whether it's the podcast to come out, or whether it's the book that you have.
The easiest way to get a hold of me is Pittsburgh HODLr, HODLR, Pittsburgh HODLR at Gmail. And then if you want to just get a hold of me, like slide into my DMs or whatever on Twitter at rbryer23, RBRYER23.
All right, well, thank you for that, and definitely, he has a wealth of knowledge, and you sent over some articles over here. But first, I guess before we get going, we want to talk about what's going on in the crypto space. A little bit better day today than what's been going on as of late. We've got Bitcoin sliding in just under $3,800. Not going to mention number two, Ethereum 104, EOS 258. Bitcoin Cash 141, so that's gone up quite a bit. It's gone up 8.9% in the past hour. Damn. Stellar a little, almost 12 cents. Tether is actually $1. I think that might be the first time it's been $1 since I've been doing this. Litecoin $30. Bitcoin SV. Who's really buying Bitcoin SV? $94. Cardano 3 cents. Tron's coming in 0.016 cents. Some other notable ones here: Monero's $47. Dash 76. And that's sort of rounding out what's going on in the crypto space. So a little bit better than the carnage we saw the past few weeks going on. And then another thing we wanted to mention is RL had some different articles he wanted to show us, and one of those articles had to deal with Trace Mayer. And Trace Mayer is probably one of the top OGs there is in the space. He was the guy that's basically responsible, I think, for sending, Doug Casey, one of his first Bitcoins, sending Max Kaiser, all these other influencers, but I think even Jeff Berwick. So if you take a look at like the lineage of his tree and how that's really sprang about, he pretty much is almost like the, a godfather type level of influencers in this space. And one of my good friends, or client of mine, and also another co-host of the show, was Chris Carabats of Smart Cash. And Chris had him on a show a few days ago. Great podcast. But what they're launching now is an initiative. And so, RL, do you want to tell us a little bit about the initiative that Trace Mayer is launching over here?
Yeah, Trace has decided there needs to be like a annual, or some people have even called for like a biannual movement towards people getting their private keys off these exchanges. So when you have cryptocurrency, you don't hold. If you're holding it on an exchange, you don't actually have the private keys. You don't really hold your wealth. It's basically centralization and holding it just like you would hold your wealth in a bank. So what Trace has decided is that I think it's January 3rd that by January 3rd, everyone should get their money off the exchanges to make sure that these exchanges aren't working as a fractional reserve system, and I actually are holding the keys that they say they have. So what it might do is cause these other institutions that might not actually have the crypto that they claim they have to actually buy and show a little price increase here. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and January 3rd does have some significance to that, and that is the anniversary of the first Genesis block of Bitcoin. And so what Trace is trying to do is really saying, hey, if you are, let's say you own Bitcoin, it doesn't really matter which one you own, I guess besides Ripple, but if you own Bitcoin and as a stakeholder in Bitcoin, that, if you are, basically you're making the network stronger by rooting out these bad actors who may or may not actually have your Bitcoin. And if you don't have your private keys, you don't really have anything. So you see a lot of people who are now, hoping, waiting for the ETF, and oh my God, we got to wait for this ETF to come about. And I can see why they would think that, because a lot of the times a rising tide lifts all ships. And so if you're in the best tech stock or the worst tech stock, you've got a 93% chance. Basically 93% of your return has to do with whether or not it's a good time to be in tech stocks. Not doesn't really matter which tech stock you're in. And that's probably the same fundamental reason, just to make things easy, of why people want an ETF. But what I see as a big problem is, let's say you have a fork, you're not necessarily guaranteed to get the other coin, and if you don't have your private keys, the only way to really audit the fact that you have your private keys is to have your private keys. And so right now you can buy Bitcoin on the stock market already today. One of the problems with that is when Bitcoin was trading at 20,000. A lot of times it had like 100% premium on it, so you're actually buying Bitcoin at 40,000 when it was already at 20,000, and so you were definitely getting wrecked if you were doing that. And one of the main, not to shill crypto self-direct over here, but it's a retirement account where you can actually hold on to your private keys, and that was very important to me. And believe me, it's not the easiest way to possibly get crypto into your retirement account. It's the easiest way to do it and hold your private keys, because it's the only way to do it. And so it's just and so we're making the trade-off of saying, hey, it will take a little bit longer, but we're going to do it, and we're going to do it right, rather than having it be super easy and all of a sudden, oh great, you've got a super easy way to not hold on to your crypto and private keys. And I think that's a bad way to do it. And that was one of the main impetuses of trying to come up with a company like what we're doing over here, was because we wanted people to hold their private keys. So now we're going to go to a clip with Trace Mayer as he talks about his initiative. So here we go. And don't tell me an ad's about to play, okay?
That's just the way it is. So this is an initiation for new hodlers of last resort. And they get to join with fellow hodlers of last resort and celebrate this Genesis block. I think it'd be a pretty cool thing to do. A lot of fun. You can choose to become a first-class Bitcoin citizen by holding your own private keys and doing your own network consensus. Second-class Bitcoin citizens, they only have their private keys. Third-class Bitcoin citizens, they don't have either their private keys or their network consensus. And if you're a third-class Bitcoin citizen, if there's anything that history in this space has taught us, it's that you're going to get wrecked one of these days. Yeah, just the way it is. So don't do that. The first rule of Panic's to do it first. By participating in this proof of keys celebration, it gives us a date. We get to generate a lot of discussion, and we can help people like with best practices and stuff. And it helps you develop the human capital that then gives you the optionality to be at the front of the line if there is a panic. Hey, why not? Better.
Yeah, because ultimately, he is absolutely right that the best time to panic is to be the one that panics first. And I think he also goes on to say, there was never a problem at Mt. Gox until there was a problem, and you had some people who may not have had any idea how to get their money on or off of it. And all of a sudden now you've got 850,000 Bitcoin worth of people all hitting the exits at once. And so by doing this type of stress test, he also goes on to say, well, some people are saying, oh, well, this is going to make the exchanges have to work really hard and they're going to have to get the Bitcoin out of cold storage. And he's like, well, what do you think? You guys paid Binance $200 million a quarter, and at least make them work for it, and prove that they have what they have. And he's not saying it wasn't pointing out Binance that they're doing anything fraudulent, just saying they're making a ton of money over here. And do you got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I think another reason he's doing this is to help educate people on the importance of actually holding the keys, but not only that, to the importance of the distributed ledger aspect of it. If everyone is running their own node, it strengthens the entire idea of the blockchain and distributed technology. So by people being able to get in there and verify and transactions and stuff, and not rely on other people like we've been stating, which is the main reason he's doing this. But just being able to run a full node and stuff. But there's a lot to learn when you're running a full node, and I got into that in the book a little bit. But I think that I think it's good overall, because this will help increase adoption over time. People need to actually learn how the entire system works, I think. So I think it's a good idea, and I'm for it. So I think anytime people are in charge of their own money, it's the best case scenario.
Yeah, and that's really the whole reason for Bitcoin is to be in control of your own money, be in control of your own future. And kind of pivoting gears here to another crypto OG, we get into another article he sent over us was one about Eric Voorhees, who he was, involved early on with Satoshi Dice, got in trouble with the government over that. Then he also then decided, hey, well, I'll go lay low and then create Shapeshift, which was, if you're really talking about, pissing off the man, that would probably be a way to piss off the man. So, I always, loving everything that Eric's doing. But, and I wasn't aware that he was I forgot that he was the CEO of Salt Lending. And right now, the Wall Street Journal was reporting that Salt Lending was subpoenaed by the SEC in February, and it had to do with their $50 million ICO held in late 2017. And basically they're saying that he was offering a security and that he was, basically barred from offering securities as relating to his Satoshi Dice conviction. And so it just seems like that Eric is definitely an easy target for somebody to go after. He's always, he's definitely poking the bear. And if I were him and I had the money he had, I don't know if I'd be, I might just be, piecing out on that's hard. I mean, I can't sit still for more than 2 seconds, so I'm probably lying when I say this, but, he would probably, if I had the, resources he had, and he's got a young family, I'd probably at that point say, hey, let's not be as aggressive poking the bear. Let's let, another, maybe a 20-year-old who doesn't have, kids in a family do this. But, I got to give him credit for, always innovating in the space. I think he's, definitely one of the thought leaders in the space. And so what do you make of the SEC coming after him for this?
Well, he's a pretty outspoken Austrian anarcho-capitalist guy. So he's been it's no secret what he believes as far as like the government coming in and creating a monopoly and taking over businesses and money. So I feel like I agree with what you just said about him sort of taking a different route. I wouldn't get out of the business or anything like that per se. I think it might be time to head to Malta or something if that was me, though, or somewhere where it's a little more crypto friendly if you're going to be like running the actual if you're the CEO or something like that. So, but yeah, I'm a big Eric Voorhees fan, and I feel like honestly they're probably not going to leave him alone as long as, like you said, he keeps innovating and changing the space. It's sort of like just one of those things where if you're taking an anti-government position, you kind of have that bullseye on your back when it comes to like leading the charge in innovation.
And especially with Shapeshift, because they this is probably a lower hanging fruit to get after him with Salt, but they probably really wanted to just get after him in general because he's always one step ahead of the man somehow. And then speaking with the man, I mean, it gets no more government than the president, and his new recent chief of staff is actually Mick Mulvaney. I don't know a lot about him, but one of the things that I do know about him, and I'm trying to pivot to the article right now, is Mulvaney co-founded the bipartisan congressional. I mean, anytime I hear the word bipartisan and congressional, I'm thinking about a bipartisan way to screw me. The bipartisan congressional blockchain caucus, which is an alliance of lawmakers that promotes crypto use at the federal legislative level. He's also participated in government committees relating to cryptocurrencies. And this is a quote from him earlier in the year where Mick goes on to say, just wrapped up a small business committee hearing on Bitcoin. I know it isn't a mainstream issue yet and may not become one, but is extraordinarily interesting and something that could eventually influence the dollar and our monetary policy. In fact, one of the witnesses drew favorable comparisons between Bitcoin and Milton Friedman. So to me, I mean, I think that is, it can't hurt unless, he's in there trying to, shill like a government, Federal Reserve.gov coin or some sort of, Ripple coin. But, it's something that probably slipped underneath the radar. I know I didn't really hear about this till pretty much right before I got on. I'm not an expert on it, but I imagine probably just like me, you probably think, hey, it probably can't hurt and it's probably a good thing, to have the president's ear and be positive on cryptocurrencies as a whole.
Yeah, as long as the government decides that some innovation is okay, I guess that's a step in the right direction. Ohio, for example, just started accepting, they're going to accept Bitcoin moving forward for business taxes. So this is just, I think that they've kind of given up on the narrative that it doesn't have any value, that it's only used by criminals. That 5-year-old, in the beginning, that's what the narrative they spun was, and now they're kind of like they're joining up, I guess you could say, slowly. But yeah, as long as you're not running the company like Eric Voorhees and outspoken about the ills of government, you should be okay, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just probably riding that line about as close as you can get, but not trying to poke them too hard. But we've got some other big news going on in the crypto space as well. We've got I think Coinbase had a 12 days of Coinbase playoff Christmas type deal, and it's showing that they are launching a direct crypto to crypto conversion for U.S. customers, which makes it seem like, hey, I don't have to go from Bitcoin to fiat to Ethereum on their platform, which is good because, I'm sure, obviously a lot of the anarchists and anarcho-capitalists are going to say, well, screw Coinbase. But, for the average, person out there who's just trying to get on there to create mass adoption, I think that, they are, if for people that say screw Coinbase, well, fine, you come up with, a better system, charge less fees, and then quit bitching. But until that, and then, which is exactly what I was doing with the competitor to our company. They were charging 15% up front, and I was, instead of bitching about it, I'm like, well, fine, I'll just go create my own. I mean, it was a lot harder than that. I mean, it took like about a year to do this, and I already knew mainly because the government held me up for 6 months was the number one impediment to this. But we have other news where day one was saying of their 12 days of Christmas or 12 days of Coinbase, I guess, was they are allowing users to spend crypto on e-gift cards. So, there's a few different outlets, I guess, that you can buy different crypto with. And another thing that they are allowing you to do, I don't have the article pulled up, but it is a PayPal integration. Can you speak to us on the PayPal integration?
Yeah, so apparently they're going to move forward with being able to take your crypto off their exchange and go straight into PayPal's repository, or whatever you want to call it. So you're going to be able to move your money from Coinbase, whenever you decide to get out, I guess, hopefully at the top. And you're going to be able to move it seamlessly into PayPal for 0% fees. So I think that's pretty cool that you'll be able to do that, and you won't even have to send it to your bank directly. So, yeah, that's a positive in my book. I think that'll be good.
Yeah, and that's something else that helps mass adoption because if you can go convert it right into PayPal, that's something where people who may have dismissed crypto in the past, all of a sudden now it could be an interesting use case for them. And then one other in this person's kind of controversial in the crypto space, but we've got somebody that's controversial from a standpoint that most people in the crypto space don't like him, which actually Eric Voorhees does like Peter Schiff quite a bit, and I know that there was a debate on, I think it was in Soho at maybe Consensus, where they had a debate, and I thought it was a good debate. But Peter Schiff's been somebody I've looked up to a lot. I've been following for a long time, not for his crypto advice. And actually, I made a clip. I need to release it, where it's Peter saying, "Look, Bitcoin crashed. It's at $70. It crashed. It's $100. It crashed." And I actually have the clip. I just need to go get off my ass and just release it. And even though, because originally I was going to release it like when it was closer to the top. Look, Bitcoin crashed down to 15,000. So I'll delete those ones out of there to game it, make it look a little bit better. But going on with Peter Schiff, he is then talking about Brian Kelly, who's another person that's not really well liked in the crypto space for all of his shilling. And just kind of setting up where we're going with this is you got Brian Kelly, who's the big time Bitcoin guru on CNBC. I call it CNBS. And he's telling people to buy at the pretty much at the very top. And then he had a really interesting exchange on Fast Money where he basically said that not basically he said there's more than one way to make money on Bitcoin, and you can actually take the short end of it as well. And they flat out asked him, like, well, are you short Bitcoin? And he said yes. And this was like only filmed about a week ago. And so not even a week ago. Today's what is today, like December 19th. And so so we're going to play this little clip. Here we go.
About shorting cryptocurrencies. And then she asked him, well, what's your position now? Where are you now? No, I'm expecting him to say, well, now I'm long, right? It's near the bottom. And he actually said, we're still short. We're short the market. This guy, the biggest crypto bull on CNBC, admitted that he's short the market. Now, how did he get short? He sold. He sold into the demand that he himself created by going on CNBC every day telling people to buy. Of course, now he's saying, well, you should only have 5% of your money in it. It's the riskiest thing you can do with your money. He wasn't telling people how risky it was, that it was the riskiest thing you can do with your money when it was near the highs, and he was probably shorting it. right? I mean, he was pump and dumping Bitcoin.
Let's actually go into a clip where we can actually go and see what Brian Kelly was doing when Bitcoin was at pretty much the all-time high. So this was a clip that was when Ripple was at $2.57. We didn't mention it today because that's the number 2 spot. So it's at 37 cents. So there we got a plug for Ripple. But here we go. Let's see what Brian Kelly was saying back. This had to have been like early January or December probably.
I'm on the Poloniex website. You can see over on this side, here's all the trades that are going on. Remember, cryptocurrencies trade 24/7. This market never sleeps. Okay, so we have Ripple. You can see these big moves.
So this is one of those like clips that's then going on and making fun of him. But what I want to do is because people can say, oh well, Tim, well here you are, out creating this company, at the height and everything crashed. If I would have listened to you, I would have lost all my money. Is a criticism people could have of me, even though I took all the domains and started working on this right around the time of the fork when the price was even a lot lower than it is today. But let's go see what I was saying in a Facebook Live that I did that you can find on my website, and this was January 3rd, which was I think it was within 12 hours of the high for Ripple. And I'm just going to skip to the end. I get into that talk about how it's a scam and on the founder, not what his role in Mt. Gox and all this other stuff that was going on. But anyways, you guys can go to I will have that linked below. But here we go. This is what I was telling people when January 3rd, when Ripple was within 12 hours of its all-time high. $1 billion market cap. Ripple's going to be at $10. $10 Ripple would mean Ripple would have a $1 trillion market cap by itself. Like, I'm going to lose my fucking mind over here with people saying that Ripple is going to be at $10. And great, I hope it gets to $10, and I hope you invest at $10, and I hope we lose. And there was another naughty word after that, and somehow the feed ended up cutting out. So, for people that want to say, because it was getting, if you talk to me in November versus talking to me in January, a lot of shit happened in that tiny 2-month time period it got to the point where everyone's like, oh, Ripple's gonna be $10, it's gonna be $10. And the other day I saw someone on I don't know, it was one of these like cryptocurrency investing groups on Facebook, and they're talking about when's Ripple gonna get to $1,000. And I'm like, oh, when's it gonna have what was that? What would it be, like a $10 trillion market cap? Yeah. I mean, or
all you have to do is look at the supply. People really don't understand some of the basics still about like cryptocurrency, but like you said, if you do the math, I don't know what the supply is of Ripple.
It's technically so they have only let out 40 billion, not only, but they control 6. They control 60, so there's technically 100 billion Ripple.
Okay, so when they did that, it was probably like 38 billion. So, like you said, to go to $10, just crunch the numbers, and you'd have to get a $1 trillion or whatever dollar market cap. It's literally impossible. I mean, this is what people need to understand is that.
So 1,000 would be 100 trillion. So it's more. So when is Ripple going to be more than the entire GDP of? I don't even know what the GDP of the world is. I mean, I'll go look it up while you finish it off. But.
Yeah, for these guys to come on and say, I mean, anyone that have that sort of claim is just completely outrageous. This is the greatest medium for exchange in the history of the world, cryptocurrency. And for people to come on and start talking about Ripple and decentralized projects, it frustrates me too, like you in that video, because this is like our chance, in my opinion. I feel like that's why I named the book Blockchain Project Renaissance, because it's like a rebirth to me. It's our opportunity to have like a real chance at capitalism again, and not these manipulated markets, the monopolies, not the corporate monopolies that they want to tell you about on television or in universities, but monopolies in government and corporation merging. So I don't want anything to do with any centralized projects or any banker coins like that. I just feel like you said in that clip, it's just outrageous, and we need to stay out of those and make sure that the ones we get into are decentralized. And but yeah, the idea that you see $10 Ripple was just, it's laughable. If it wasn't for people throwing their money away.
Okay, maybe we get $10 Ripple when we get $20 a gallon gas. I mean in that type of world where the fiat currencies have collapsed, and maybe, I can see that. I think we're, still a ways away from that, so I'm not going to hold my breath on that. But I think it's very important, if you go back to who created the Federal Reserve, you got, Paul Warburg, who was based off the play Annie for, he was Daddy Warbucks in that play. And he said, we shall have one world government. It's only a matter if it's through consent or conquest. And so what they're trying to do is by the world government, the best thing to do is to unite everybody with a currency. And so what I think is going to eventually happen is that they're going to try to hijack, one of these crises that they create and say, look, we've got this new, cryptocurrency, and that's going to be the new currency. And then that's going to, and maybe each country has their own cryptocurrency, but then that's tied to like a global special drawing right cryptocurrency. So now you've got a fiat cryptocurrency made up of other fiat cryptocurrencies, and it could be the ultimate mark of the beast type system. So that's why I think it's very important where we're at a crossroads in humanity where we can either be there to educate people at the forefront to say, hey, let's take the decentralized ones that can't be tracked, traced, and surveilled, or you're going to be fooled into the government versions. And there's people who are begging for the government version and saying, the only thing that's wrong with Bitcoin is that the government hasn't approved it, or that the government hasn't regulated it, or that the government, doesn't accept it. And, to me, the government, these other, and part of what Trace was saying in my friend's podcast the other day on, it was a Smart Cash talk or Smart Talk with Chris Karabatz, and he was going on, and Trace was saying that, the dollar is an altcoin. And why don't we treat all these other, fiat currencies as altcoins? And then you get into, well, how do they determine the supply? How do you audit it? What type of trust and transparency is it? And then if you were to try to pitch these fiat currencies in the same way let's say, you pitch one of these ICOs or altcoins, and just like, most ICOs are crap, same are most fiat currencies, including the dollar, are crap. So I don't know if you've got any take on that.
This is sort of like the parity, I guess, between like younger people and older people. I think we grew up more with the internet, and we've had more of a decentralized upbringing. Where if you talk to somebody older, you can see that they're more like conditioned to believe like CNBC and Brian Kelly. So I think that it's important for people like us to get out and do these sort of shows, and while you do your stuff and I do my stuff, is to educate as much as possible in this space, because people are looking for alternatives in media today, and going to CNBC to get your news about what cryptocurrency to get into is going to lead us down a dark path. Like, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking to my friend in Germany just about the idea of like the mark of the beast and this the binary between centralization and decentralization, and how we really do. This is like could be one of the most important times in human history, because everything is going to be recorded on blockchains, and it's just going to be determined whether it's centralized or decentralized in the future, in my opinion. So this is like a very pivot. The next 10 years, especially since now we're heading like out of the infancy of the space, it's going to be very important what we decide to get into. So choose wisely is all I have to say about that.
And also going back to what Trace was saying, become a first-class citizen here, and, have your private keys, do the consensus, know something. Don't just say, hey, I went and, threw, $100 on Coinbase and called it a day. And if you are looking to get into the space, start small. I mean, the fact that people are coming to me this time last year and being like, hey, I want to throw $10,000 into Bitcoin. I'm like, well, how much money do you have? In general, they're like, well, I've got $10,000. I'm like, well, what's the biggest investment you've ever made? They're like, well, I've never made any investment. I'm like, well, what do you know about Bitcoin? They're like, that John McAfee said he'd, eat his dick off if it didn't go to $1 million. And so I'm like, well, do you have any clue, what Bitcoin's done in the past? Several times it's lost over 80%. And I made the worst prediction in the history of predictions. And I'm, willing to say this. It was, basically, it was like January 2017, and my prediction was that Bitcoin was going down to $300. But it was because I knew that it had made the run up from basically like 100 to 1,200 back down to back down before, and now it was back up. And I was thinking, I didn't think the ETF would get approved. I thought, and which was like kind of one of the big catalysts, is everyone's like, oh, if this ETF gets it. So there's always like different negative headwinds that were going on, and then I quickly reversed that call. And, around 1800, but I mean, how many other financial advisors were out there even making calls on Bitcoin before it was even going up? And then to see, pretty much everyone in my industry has shunned it, or they think it's a scam, or they know nothing about it. And so, I'm sort of at the forefront, had to take a lot of arrows over here, but it's so important to educate people on what's really going on, to not be fooled by this, what could be a mark of the beast system. I know another friend of mine, Bob Stanley, talked about, there hasn't really been any deaths in the Bitcoin space. I mean, I'm sure there've been some kidnappings and private keys and stuff like that, but what he was saying was, he goes, well, the powers that be, they need the blockchain developers to basically solve the scaling problem. And then maybe once the scaling problem is solved, and I know there's several different ways that people are coming about trying to solve the scaling problem. That's a whole nother episode, or that's probably a rabbit hole that's hours deep in and of itself. But he's like, once kind of like people in the crypto space do the work for the government for them, then at that point they can then kind of merge it into their own, FED.GOV coin. And so this is the time to be aware. This is the time to, be a first-class citizen. It's the time to educate yourself, have your private keys. If you're interested in getting, a little bit of your crypto into retirement accounts, I'm the guy to do that. I don't know of any other financial advisor that can do that for you in America. And it's not, about, hey, look, let's try to make a whole bunch of money. That wasn't the, I was already, finally making money. And then I had to actually, this cost me a ton of money to be able to do this, but it's something that I think we're trying to get ahead of it. I don't want to see people, going through, these different exchanges where you're not holding on to your private keys. Yeah, Fidelity might come out with something, and yeah, it might be super easy. Or yeah, there's other competitors out there who are going to, you can make an online application, and maybe within, a few months from now, those will be online. And you can get your own, your crypto and your IRA there. But will you have your private key? And if the answer is no, well, then you don't really have anything if you don't have your private key. And so with what we're setting up is you can't actually steal, basically there's no way I could go and steal your Bitcoin and go off to Bahamas or Malta or somewhere else, because that'd be probably a terrible place to go to Malta if I was stealing people's Bitcoin, because that's where like the whole community is.
Hey, he's here.
He's here. This would be there, or Puerto Rico, or a few other hotbeds around the world. That'd be a terrible place to go. But so I definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast today. I think we learned a lot. I think it's a very definitely very important subjects. Actually, I think we had one more news article that we're going to cover, and this gets into, I'm sure a lot of us have heard of Ivan on Tech. He's got a very popular YouTube channel, and Ivan. He goes over the chronology of who is held on to the Bitcoin repository, the code, and basically, it started off with, Gavin Andreessen, and there's a few other people that Satoshi obviously started it. Then it went to, I think, Gavin and Jeff Garzik, and then they took Gavin Andreessen off after he hadn't been contributing for a while. And now we're at the point where, there's 4 people basically in control of Bitcoin Core, but who could technically sneak something in there, or who technically could overtake the code, could actually be the people that are in control of GitHub itself. And not saying that it's going on, but it's just something to be aware of, because if somebody can do something, then oftentimes those powers try to do whatever it is that they have the ability to do. So now we're going to go play a little clip from Ivan on Tech where he discusses just that.
GitHub has a power that they can basically have access to the repository. They could theoretically change the code in the repository because they have the admin access. And who knows what kind of employees GitHub has. At the end of the day, they have all the code, and maybe they can sneak something in. Maybe they can, change a line of code without anyone noticing. Well, this is something that is true. This is something that the Bitcoin developers actually are thinking about, and therefore you have every commit being signed by the PGP keys of the maintainers. So there are certain keys that...
I think he then goes on to kind of dispel some of these fears, and I just remember there was another article I wanted to bring up from actually it was the Bad Crypto Show, but is this something that you think could be a potential vulnerability of hey, if we're using this centralized control of GitHub, that all of a sudden that it could cause big problems in the future, especially since it's owned by Microsoft, or shouldn't we have? Because I know recently it was purchased by Microsoft. And do you know of any other competitors coming online, or maybe decentralized options that could be coming online? We didn't talk about this earlier, so I'm not like planting a question.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think I honestly I looked at. this is sort of something that people in the beginning, I think, had a major problem with cryptocurrencies, is that somebody could get in there and maybe manipulate the code or something like Ivan was talking about. But I just I don't think that's a major problem, since, like he said there in that brief clip, everything that is done on there, I'm pretty sure is signed off. So, you're going to see the signature of the people that are doing it. So it'd be really easy to trace back to who was in there, maybe writing the code, manipulating stuff. I think that I don't see that as a real big worry in my personal case. I think the other story you were talking about is the what's his name?
Brock Pierce.
Yeah, Brock Pierce, which is, you mentioned Bob Stanley. I'm friends with him too, and that's sort of a good segue into this. Would be his what he's working on with the decentralized internet on top of on EOS. So yeah, I don't know if you want to go into that clip or not, but yeah, that's not something I really worry about or keeps me up at night. With the idea that GitHub is going to get in there and destroy the idea, because I mean, what sort of value would they have in doing that? I just don't see. Long run, everyone who holds a lot of Bitcoins want the price to go up. So
unless you're Brian Kelly, apparently,
yeah.
Until it's back up to 20,000, then he'll tell everybody that he was long the entire time. So.
Yeah, it's not something I'm too concerned about.
Yeah, I just want to give a happy belated birthday shout out to Bob Stanley. I think it was his birthday 2 or 3 days ago, and we're going to have him on as a guest. It's very fascinating with what he's trying to do with his Red Pill project. But now, I guess, moving on to Brock Pierce. So Brock, he's another controversial figure. So I guess we've hit on a lot of controversial figures, except for, I guess, Roger Ver, Calvin Ayre, and I guess we did talk about McAfee, so a little bit. So
we've mentioned him now, though. So
okay, so now he's been mentioned. So here we go. That's rounding it out. Here we go. Here we got a clip from Brock Pierce.
We're watching the world's currencies, call it cryptocurrencies and fiat, beginning to tokenize. We're going to be watching the world's debt markets and bond markets tokenized. We're going to be watching the world's equity markets tokenized. We're going to be watching the world's real estate markets tokenized. Things like energy, when you start thinking about how the entire world is going to tokenize, we are going to see the birth of a quadrillion-dollar market. And so the equity piece is the one I want to focus at for next year. Real estate's going to be a couple of years longer, but we're going to see, more transactions beginning. That'll just take longer to develop. But I think the equity markets are going to be a very interesting one, where if I was a startup today having nothing to do with blockchain or crypto, I would be looking at doing a security token. And the reasons why are the same reason that ICOs were so popular or crowdfunding has been so popular. This is really just taking the Jobs Act and applying it to blockchain and throwing on that sort of ICO phenomenon into it, which is most people can't invest in a venture fund because the average venture fund takes 10 or 15 years to get liquidity. Most people can't afford to have their capital locked up that long. By tokenizing, earlier stage businesses, you're essentially going public at a Series A or Series B level. And so I think we're going to be watching a market emerge for early stage companies that will disrupt, capital formation of late stage VC in the same way we thought ICOs were, but it's really going to be STOs that are going to do most of that. And then start looking at the later stage public companies.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share that because I think this really gets into the heart of, people talk about what's going to make crypto pop, what's going to be the next big thing, big catalyst. And, we've got, ease of use, I think for me is, probably, number one, but also these real life applications. And when you take a look at how the traditional stock market works, or I guess doesn't work, I'll say work in air quotes over here, it's just a crazy inefficient process. And if you could tokenize the stock market, which people like T0 are trying to do, there's several other T0 like competitors. If you have no idea what T0 means, go back to the first episode of the Crypto Wealth edition of the Liberty Advisor podcast, and then you can get all caught up on that. But what Brock is saying, I think, is very profound. We mainly because I've given a presentation on this, so that's why I think it's profound. But the whole STO market, could be the potential of a quadrillion-dollar market, and that could happen in a very short amount of time, where we can go from all of a sudden, this is something where VC private equity guys have no idea what this even entails, and then 2 years from now, boom, that's what everybody's doing, and then that's going to forever change the history of the world. And I don't know if you had saw this clip beforehand, but What do you make of, the world going to STOs or tokenizing, basically tokenizing all the different securities that are out there? And whether
this circles back to, I think, where we let off with Eric Voorhees. Like, do we want to run the innovators out of the space and out of the country? Like, as far as like, United States problem, I view this as like a government problem. Like, are we gonna run everybody out? Excuse me. That wants to create. So I think everything will be tokenized in the future. I mean, look at how many projects we saw this year do ICOs and stuff. I mean, like, now you can't even do an ICO in the United States. They're very limited. I know they said that moving forward in 2019 that you're going to be able to do certain things with ICOs if it passes their clearance or whatever, their laws. But I think that if people, if the government comes in and just squashes this, we're going to be left behind, because you already see all these businesses moving to like Malta and all these other countries that are more blockchain friendly. We have to make sure that, like, I think that's why another reason that what's his name, the guy we were talking about a minute ago that just got appointed chief of
Mick Mulvaney.
Yeah, I think that that is a positive, seeing that, because we need to be ahead of this. Like, we're already 10 years in. As the space starts to develop even more, we need to make sure that these companies decide to stay in the United States, as far as like an American perspective on this, I guess. So I think that he's right about a lot of that. And I think in the future we're going to see real estate, everything will be done on blockchain. So you can already see like people or companies selling houses, selling luxury cars in Bitcoin, and people are like, well, Bitcoin's pegged to the dollar. But it is right now. There could be a point in the future where one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and we don't even, no one even mentions the value in USD, so, or whatever currency, euros, or whatever you're in. So it is that way right now, and it's an easy way for people to look at it and say, this is what it is. This is the value compared to holding fiat currency. But like I said, I could see 15 years down the road, if Bitcoin's $1 million, I don't know if people are going to be comparing that peg anymore to USD or another fiat currency. I can see, like, maybe in the future where it really is just, what's your net value or net worth, and somebody says, I have X number of this, X number of that. So it's sort of like a long, that's a while off still, obviously. As some, many people, I think 1% of the population have like dipped their feet into the cryptocurrency pool or whatever. But in the future, I could see that happening, because I remember when Bitcoin was $1. I read the white paper in 2009, and everyone said I was crazy. So I just see this. I see so much growth. Things are going to need to be done on blockchain, and people will want to be in the places that embrace it. So that was kind of a long answer, but yeah, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm checking out right as I'm trying to see if there's any new news that's going on, and it looks like that it says True USD partners with NEXO to provide holders with instant loans on cryptocurrency. So it almost sounds like what Salt was trying to do, that now they're like, okay, well, Salt's in trouble, so let's just swoop in and do the same thing as them. These are articles I'm just looking at right now. Speaking of security token offerings, Blythe Masters, she was the one that was behind all the credit default swaps at JP Morgan. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I mean, I did not think that her coming into the space was necessarily a good thing. Apparently she's resigned over personal reasons. I did see that yesterday. We've got Bitcoin surging 18%. Australian tax office warns traders about declaring cryptocurrency profits. We've got Robinhood, that is the banking app, or I guess not a banking app, stock trading app, cryptocurrency app, where now bankers are upset that, hey, they didn't go through all the official protocols to get their new savings accounts approved. Like, you can't be paying people 3% interest. What do you think? Get back in line. I don't know what's going on there. The Big Short, former IMF economist, finally closes year-old Bitcoin short. Let's see what's going on over there. Coinbase adding 4 more ERC20 tokens. And then, do you know anything about WanChain? I first came across my radar just a few weeks ago, but apparently now they've added a loop ring, which is what I think Monero uses to enable on-chain decentralized trading. So I'm just looking at this. So I'm just looking at this in real time. So I'm going to give you some homework to look into on-chain. That way I don't have to do it. But what they were saying last time, I just trying to go off memory here, is that they're creating a way to, and this is not what this article is about, but they were basically, it was like Shapeshift meets Monero for being able to trade, Bitcoin and ERC20 tokens within each other and avoiding the classical exchanges. And it seems like now that they've added the loop ring, that would probably be the Monero aspect of that. It probably gets into some complicated stuff. Again, I didn't read it. I'm just like, hey, let's go check out CCN before we get off to see if there's anything going on.
That brief synopsis tells me that that's pretty interesting. I'm all for like everything is decentralized. So if they're going to be able to, if you're going to be able to have like a more private network where you can do all that stuff, that'd be I'm loving all the innovation that I'm seeing. So yeah, bring it on.
Cool. And this will be the last thing that we wanted to get into was again, we're going back to Brock Pierce, but he talks about how the internet itself is actually broken. And this is something where I was at several conferences where they were, where I personally know several people in this space that are trying to basically solve this problem. But now we're going to go to Brock Pierce for the last time today. And here we go.
The internet is broken. The internet was built on a faulty foundation. It was essentially built on sand because it's not secure. It was known how to secure it when it was first being developed, but we didn't. The computer processing capabilities at the time were not there to implement it. And then there were parties that wanted backdoors. They didn't want it to be secure. The problem now is hackers are getting better and better and better. You now have state-sponsored hackers. You have nation states that are building teams and allowing hacking, meaning it's legal, it's state-sponsored, it's military. So now that you have state-sponsored hacking and hackers around the world are getting better and better, the internet is broken. The internet is going to have to be upgraded. I believe everything on a new technology stack, and I believe blockchain is going to be the security layer that enables that. So when you start thinking about that, it's going to be a jump ball for everything. It's going to be driven not just by the things that we've been building in our experimentations. It's going to be driven by the fact that these old systems are insecure and vulnerable, and they're going to have to get upgraded at some point because they're going to fail. And so that's going to create a huge opportunity. I also, I don't want to sell EOS because I'm chain agnostic.
All right, since he doesn't want to sell it, then we won't give him a chance to sell it, and we'll cut him off right there. But I've got nothing against EOS. Just thought it'd be a funny thing to throw in there. But what they're talking about, I've got a lot of friends over at Nexus Earth. So we got Colin Cantrell, who is the founder of it. His dad, Jim Cantrell, was one of the founding members of SpaceX with Elon Musk. And what they're planning on doing is having these cube satellites that go up into space, have a decentralized basically internet where they recreate the stack of the internet and this gets into some geek stuff that's way over my head. I was presenting at their conference and I've had some talks with them, and basically what they're trying to do, and I guess in layman's terms, is the bottom base layer of the internet that Brock was talking about is that they're trying to merge it with crypto to then create an ultra secure layer. And again, I don't want to get, I don't fully know this well enough to, I guess, to explain it, and it gets into some really geeky type stuff. But the bottom line is that they're trying to fix the base fundamental layer of the internet, and they've got some really sharp guys working on it. They've got Victor Moreno, who's one of the Cisco fellows, has got like tons of patents on the backbone of the internet. Dino Ferranucci, who's got like 50 patents on the backbone of the internet, signed on. Jeff Garzik, just recently signed on to help them out. And Garzik was one of the first people who was in control of the Bitcoin code at one point, and then also was one of the guys. So he was interacting with Satoshi, and he was interacting with with the guy that created Linux as well, and one of the only people on Earth that has a distinction of both. And I've got some other friends over there too. So to give quick shout outs to Brian Venna, Anastasia, Diana. I'm probably forgetting some people, Scott Bischoff. So friends over there at Nexus Earth, you guys are doing some great things, but they're trying to fix this stack. I know there's other people like MadeSafe. There's probably at least like 5 or 6 others that are all trying to basically upgrade the internet. And so when you talk about what could make the price of this take off, well, if you've got the base fundamental level of the internet. You even got like Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who created the internet, not sorry Al Gore, that he even says that not that like one person created it, but what even he was saying is that this is not what I created. This is broken and it needs to be upgraded. And so, you talk about, securitizing assets, you talk about having, the base fundamental layer of the internet getting upgraded. And all of a sudden now you could make the case of, a quadrillion dollar, and I was only saying that, Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency markets in the next, and I was saying like 5 years, I say it's about a year ago, will be a multi-trillion-dollar market. So I'm not going to say it's going to be a quadrillion-dollar market, but there's a quadrillion-dollar market that then can be tokenized, which would then probably give the value of cryptos into the trillions. This is not financial advice. This is, don't invest more than you can, afford to lose, and it could go to zero. Many of these will go to zero, and talk with your own financial advisor, and he's going to tell you, or she will tell you no, and then you can come talk to me, who knows a little bit more than they probably do about this. So I get to use my disclaimer as a plug to kill two birds with one stone. So suck it, SEC, on that one. And I don't know, I got to be fun with this stuff. But what do you think about that? And I'm sure, and again, I hit you with this kind of last second.
That's one of the last arguments I ever hear about why cryptocurrency won't work long run, is that
financial advisors tell them it won't, or no?
What if they take the internet down? Which is such a ridiculous claim, but just for the fact that these people are working on decentralized internets, I think that's another plus in my book. I don't see them trying to take the internet down, but the internet has become more and more centralized every year. It seems like Google, Facebook, they're all basically working with sort of arms of the government, or at least that's the rumor. So all these geniuses getting together, like we were talking about, and creating these different ways to keep us online and keep our wealth on our wherever we keep it. I'm not going to say where you have it, but however you're holding on to your private keys, them not being able to shut you down is obviously going to be a bonus. So I think that's great. And there was something else I was going to say, but I just lost my train of thought.
All right, well, you get that train back. So we've got also what Nexus is trying to do as well, is they're going to have these different mesh networks. And my wife was going, I have to make sure she's not calling me. Actually, I've got Ernest Hancock calling in, who is, I'll get back to him in just a second. Earlier today, he had on Doug Casey and Jeff Berwick and another guy on his show. Let me just answer this real quick. No, let's give him a call back. But anyways, now I lost my train of thought. Okay, the mesh networks. And so with the mesh networks, it's, everyone is kind of like their own little node, and then it's creating a mesh network internet that will then also have satellites that are going to be 100 kilometers up in the earth. That way there's no government jurisdiction once you're 100 kilometers up from the sky. So anarchy is only 60 miles away. And then their crypto is also going to be quantum resistant, where basically they add time into the equation. So let's say you've been a node for 4 years. Well, a quantum computer theoretically can't hack 4 years. And so that's another way to build, and it's like 1024 encryption. And again, it's gone from $13 down to, I don't know, it's like 20 something cents now. Not giving financial advice, it can easily, go to zero, because there's a lot of projects working on this. But I know some of the guys behind it, they didn't tell me to plug it. I just saw how this fit in with what Brock Pierce was talking about. And a lot of people aren't aware of this crypto, and they're like way down on the list, like 160 something last time I checked. So wanted to just give that a plug.
I remember what I was going to say. Back to what you were saying about the aggregate market cap in the long run. 5 years from now, I don't see why it couldn't be $3 trillion. I don't think that's too outrageous. We were right on the cusp of $1 trillion market late last year, or early this year. So I think it got up to $900 billion. So long run, I'm very optimistic, and I think I could definitely see $3 trillion market cap in the next 5 years. And who knows after that? If everyone's starting to, all the young people are getting in, all the millennials and stuff. If this is I don't know anybody. I know very few people my age even still interested in specie like precious metals and stuff. I think that it's good to hold both, as long as you're not holding too much of your money in fiat. That's my I'm not a financial advisor either, but that's sort of how I feel about it. Cryptocurrency.
Well, I am a financial advisor, so I've got to give. I'm like the only person in the crypto space that has to say, because everyone's like, I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm like, oh shit, I am a financial advisor, but I'm not giving unless I'm actually your client and we're having one-on-one discussions, and I know what you can afford and what you can't afford and what your knowledge of the space. And hey, if you want to go put $50 in and try to, learn. That's how I recommend, people do it. They just, start small, and then
You're not giving blanket advice to everyone.
Yeah, I'm not giving blanket advice, and for a lot of, and I told a couple of people about this when I told one of the wealthiest people I know about this at $30, really sticking my neck out there. And unfortunately, he didn't take that advice. But I prefaced it with, this could easily go to zero. I'm like, who knows? I'm like, maybe someday it'll go to $10,000. I remember that's what I said. And then I was like, well, shit. I was off by 100%. I went to $20,000. So it's sort of crazy. And then the other aspect of what I was trying to do was having these trust strategies where if you have a highly appreciated asset like Bitcoin that you bought at a penny and all of a sudden now it's $3,800, that you could sell it into these trusts. You get these different tax breaks, and the tax breaks offset the income you get from the trust that actually pays you. And then it's a way where then upon your passing, then the money goes to different foundations or charities as opposed to the government. And then there's other ways to make sure your family's taken care of by different life insurance trusts that then gives your family tax-free death. So basically, I've created like the way to help people escape the system and basically, make everybody except for the IRS better off. But then the government, temporarily shut me down and wouldn't let me actually. I lost my job for speaking at Acapulco last year about this subject. So if anyone wants to be like, oh, this guy's a financial advisor and he's just shilling something, how many other advisors are going to, lose a six-figure job to do this? And I thought that, when it was getting that crazy of a price, that was a good point to sell and diversify. And like Trace Mayer talks, there should be a certain amount that you trade and a certain amount that you hodl. And probably just like anything, you want a certain amount of cash that's probably emergency resort. And I'm sure a lot of these crypto startups wish they had that, because what they saw happen was, hey, we raised, $15-20 million in Ethereum, and now that's worth, maybe $1 million, or maybe it's worth, $2.5 million, but now we've still got, all these developers we have to pay, we've got to lease, we've got all this different shit that we've got to account for, and now we've got to go sell our ether at a fire sale. And so even for some crypto companies, it does make sense to have some money in cash, because if you have to pay suppliers in cash. I just came out with an episode today that actually gets into all the tax ramifications, where I interviewed a tax professional who's specializing in crypto. And so I haven't shilled that yet. So if you guys are listening to this and haven't yet listened to that one, I would highly recommend that, as we get into a lot of different issues from the standpoint of somebody like me who's a CFP, to then be able to ask our tax professional these different pointed questions, because it does get confusing, and we don't want to end up in jail. And then on that same token, we were going to have an interview with Lynn Albrook next week, or actually right after Christmas. So so I'm definitely not shying away from people over here, and because a lot of people are like, oh, you're in with terrorists and you're in with drug dealers, and so I'm like, what?
I got that so much when I first started talking about Bitcoin. People were like, who are you? Like, what do you, you're a scumbag talking about this. I'm like, I just want people to have financial freedom, And then one thing I was going to say is we're sticking our necks out. Like, our reputation is on the line. That's one thing about putting out content like we're doing and writing a book. Like, people are going to be able to go back to this. Like, we might be right, we might be wrong, but this is obviously something we believe in, or we wouldn't be talking about it. So I just feel like, if we're going to see, it is still volatile. Cryptocurrency is going to go up and down, but I know we're both Austrians, and like Visa said, values within us. So as long as people value the ability to use the best medium of exchange, I don't foresee it not going up and holding its value and being a good store of value, and even gaining more and more over time. So I just wanted to get that out, because it's like, why would we come out and talk about something we don't believe in, especially in the digital age where it's so easy to, like, how many YouTube videos do we pull up during this show? You can just go and say, hey, this guy, he was talking about this and he was wrong. But we'll see if we're right or wrong. I'm pretty sure we're going to be right, but I'm not a soothsayer.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I created the podcast and started podcasting basically right after the election. I decided to come up with an actual podcast. I mean, the third one I made was on, talking about Macron and all of his, Rothschild connections. And I mean, he worked directly for the Rothschild Bank. It's not even, you don't have to like actually, take too many, hops to figure out that he's a Rothschild agent. Worked directly with them. And then, I came up with one. It was called The Trump Effect and Why Good News is Bad News. that the presentation was actually made January 2017, and the entire thesis was, Trump would probably do some good things to make the economy go up. That economy going up will then cause the interest rates to go up because the Fed will now not have the excuse to not raise rates. Then that will then prick the bubble that is the bond bubble, which will then also prick the stock market bubble. And that's and then it's so frustrating. Then people are like, oh, you're just some liberal against Trump. I'm like, actually, it's you that are letting him walk into this trap that is actually against this. And then, then I've got, Americans' pension system and how that's bound to go down. Then I was on Ernest Hancock's show on January 25th, which almost, so the stock market hit a high on the 26th and it went down for a while. Then I think in September or October, it hit another high, but barely above where it was at back then. But what I said, the worst thing you could do was be short the volatility index. And then people that were short the volatility index lost all their fucking money 2 weeks later. 2 weeks. It went from an all-time low to boom, wiped out the people that were on that. There was a couple funds that were closed down. I actually had a client who had money with another advisor, and they lost all their money in that fund. Luckily, it was a relatively small amount of money. Got an article here about the government odds of success are zero. Had a quick 8-minute one somewhere here called the perfect financial storm is brewing. Had another one, and that was in May. In August, we've got it was something I'm only seeing the snippet of what the actual title was. So I'm trying to figure out what it says. So it's Wall Street celebrates longest bull market ever, and then potential black swans that could derail the rally, and that was August 21st. And then we've got this was a client video that was sent out on October 4th, made October 2nd, talking about why the contrarian reasons for why I think the stock market's going to go down, released the day the market started going down, and then started getting into all this other. So you know what? All these other advisors who want to say, oh, I was saying this, bull fucking shit. No, you weren't. Let me see the proof. I've got all the proof here, whether I'm right or wrong. And I've pissed some people off by having these types of stances. And I've had a client leave me who said I was too pro-Trump, another client who left me because they said I wasn't Trump enough. And so I'm like, well, what do I need to do over here?
You can't make everyone happy. That's one thing I've learned. Even just talking about this stuff casually, I'm not. You're doing the investing for these people. I'm not. But even having casual conversations it's just a mindset, mentality. Some people, they're just not receptive to a new idea, I guess. So you're not going to make everyone happy. It's especially people that are still stuck in that left-right paradigm. It's just it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and somewhere it shows the descriptions: economics, finance, crypto, and retirement podcast interested in exposing the false left-right paradigm. So boom, there you go. Central bank manipulation. Media double standards, lying politicians, and fake news. And I'm also claiming to be the first person to appropriate that term from the left. And so I'm not sure if you've ever been on the Liberty Advisor Facebook page, where I had a term called fake news list that went viral from there on November 16th of 2016. And the only person I named by name on that list was Paul Krugman. And then he won Trump's award for being most fake news a year and a half later. And so... And that's a very random person. That's a very random person to name on a fake news list. If I only picked that one person, and also another random person to win Trump's award for most fake news. So I like to pat myself on the back for that. And then I got shadow banned the very next day and went from 1,200 subscribers a day to 0 overnight. But I'm sure that's just me, conspiracy theorist. I'm sure.
It's coincidence, man.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just a coincidence that I have fake news go viral and then I get shut down. And if I go live now, I get one person that watches out of 32,000. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, but you know what? I can say this with a smile on my face because I know that there's other blockchain alternatives, whether it's Steemit or DTube or DLive or other platforms that are going to be built on top of Steemit or other Steemit-like platforms that are going to be out there. And the powers that be are going to wish they never basically messed with the crypto community to begin with. And if you look at people who are getting banned, it's the common thread is being anti-war. Is pretty much the common thread. It's not even pro-Trump people. There's plenty of libertarians and people that hate Trump that got banned as well. It's whether it's the Cop Block page or even Sterling Lujan even got banned, and he's pretty much never swears or never is obviously he's not inciting violence or anything like that. But what they claimed that they're doing is they used links and they spread those links from their web pages onto other groups to promote their groups, thereby making themselves look bigger than they really were to then game the system. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's what happens. If you try to promote what you're doing, you spread the links to different places, and I've seen your links in different places, and that's what you do. I mean, I was too lazy to do that. So, I mean, maybe, and I stopped posting for like 2 months, which now I'm like, shit, I wish I was just, a bigger pain in their ass. That way I got kicked off because now I've got this lame shadow ban story. And so now it's like, well, now I just need to start poking the bear again to get, kicked off. And I'm sure I could if I really tried, but, I'm not trying to get kicked off, but I'm sure now that I'm somewhat active again, I'm sure it won't be too long. But now they've really messed with us. I've got to call Ernie back now. But anyways, it's just the whole thing is just all messed up. And they're going to wish they didn't do this because now they're going to have a way where they're not going to be able to stop us. And they're going to wish they just, let us be as is. But, sorry you guys.
Let's leave these guys in the dark ages where they belong,
Yeah, and ultimately, we don't need... And ultimately, we don't need to, end what they're doing. We just need to create systems where we can ignore what they're doing.
Exactly. I'm with you 100%.
All right, well, we're going to leave it there because I've got my wife calling in. I got Ernest calling in and got to, got some things to take care of today. But definitely appreciate you guys listening. Make sure to go on and subscribe to the podcast. It's on all the different enemy platforms that are available. We'll eventually get them up on, some other platforms as well. But, we've got them on, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. You can watch the actual video right now. But thank you for coming on today, and we will talk to you guys later.
Tim, thanks.
Thanks. All right, so let me stop this recording.